They say when a man loses everything, the silence is louder than any storm. Soren Vale didn't just lose his vision, he lost the very thing that made him, him. But before I take you deeper into his story, please do something small that helps in a big way. Tap the like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below about a time you had to rebuild yourself. It helps push this story to others who might need it too. And now, let's begin. The skyline outside Soren Vale's penthouse stretched endlessly, a horizon of power, prestige, and ruthless ambition. He had once stood at the very top of that world. 37. Billionaire. Design empire built from nothing but obsession and foresight. While others hesitated, he had moved. While others calculated, he had seen. Not anymore. Now, every morning began the same, in darkness. He blinked. Nothing changed. Blackness. Not a dim room. Not shadows. Just void. He lay still on Egyptian cotton sheets in a room built for a king, but ruled by silence. Machines beeped softly at his bedside, reminders that not even his money could stop nature when it came for him. 2 years ago, his world had started to flicker. At first, it was barely noticeable. Colors faded into each other, reds looking more like rust, blues becoming grayish smears. He had dismissed it as stress, too many sleepless nights staring at floor plans and international contracts. Then came the distortions. Faces blurred, streetlights split like oil on water. He tried to ignore it, until one day he couldn't read the labels on his own branded shampoo bottle. He was diagnosed with Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. Rare, aggressive, irreversible. The doctors had warned him about treatment. He had ignored them. He'd built empires, surely he could fight this on his own terms. But the universe doesn't negotiate with pride, and pride had a price. It was on a cold Wednesday morning, just after an investor call, when he received the final warning. Total blindness was days away without immediate action. He got in the car, furious, not at the disease, but at the audacity of it, that it would try to rob him of all people. The crash was brutal. A bend in the road. A flicker of light, too late. Tires screamed. Steel folded. When he woke up in the hospital days later, he couldn't move. Spinal injury. Blindness. A body that once commanded boardrooms now refused to obey the most basic commands. From the outside, people said it was a tragedy, a fall from grace, a story of ambition punished. But inside that penthouse, Soren didn't weep. He raged. He fired every nurse, refused every therapist, ignored every friend. He didn't need sympathy. He needed silence. The only person he hadn't driven away was Rael. Rael had been with him since the beginning, back when Soren was living in a tiny New Jersey loft with a laptop, a sketch pad, and a fire in his gut no one could put out. Now Rael stood in the doorway of his bedroom, voice low but steady. "You need someone, Soren." "I need nothing," Soren growled. "You're going to rot in this cage. Then let me rot in peace." Rael sighed. "You built an empire from nothing. Are you really going to let it end in silence?" Soren didn't respond. He didn't have to. The silence was his answer. For the next few weeks, the only sounds inside the penthouse were the soft hisses of the elevator and the occasional clink of untouched meals. Until the day Rael returned with one final offer. "She's not like the others." Soren sat in his chair by the window. He couldn't see the view anymore, but he still faced it, stubborn to the end. "I told you, I'm done with babysitters. She's not a nurse. She's a neurological rehab specialist. Top of her field. They all say that she doesn't pity people." Silence. Soren tilted his head. "Name?" "Alina Rowe." He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. And that was the first crack. Soren Vale's penthouse was a masterpiece of architecture. Polished marble, silent elevators, minimalist design in matte black and cold steel. It once mirrored the man who lived in it, sharp, precise, unforgiving. But now, it was a tomb. No music, no visitors, no purpose, just routines without meaning. He hadn't stepped beyond the main hall in weeks. Not since the day he'd instructed Rael to disable the balcony's safety sensors. Not because he planned to jump, but because knowing he could gave him some illusion of control. That morning, the elevator chimed. He frowned. Rael hadn't warned him anyone was coming. He didn't move from the leather armchair that faced the giant windows, where sunlight once meant something. Footsteps entered, steady, measured, not tentative. A tray clinked against a table. Then came Rael's voice. "She's here." I didn't say yes. Rael ignored him. "You can fire her tomorrow like the rest. But give her 1 hour." Silence. Then another voice, a woman's, soft, but with a steel thread beneath it. "I hear you don't like people." Soren turned his head toward the sound. "I don't like liars. Or pity." "Lucky for you," she replied. "I'm not offering either." The room went still. For the first time in weeks, Soren actually listened. Her voice wasn't high-pitched or patronizing. It didn't reek of rehearsed empathy. It was clean, grounded, real. "Name?" he asked. "Alina Rowe. Do you always barge into patients' homes uninvited?" "I come where I'm needed." "Funny. I don't remember needing anyone." "I'm not here for your memory. I'm here for your spine." She walked across the room, confident steps, no hesitation, and placed something down with a soft thud. Then, again, the room fell silent. He was about to tell her to leave when she spoke again. "Your brace is misaligned. That's why you've been waking up with shooting pain in your lower back." He tensed. "And you can tell that from just walking in?" "I can tell that because your posture is off. Your right shoulder droops when you breathe, and your voice tightens every time you shift weight to your left." Soren blinked. Then, without warning, she moved behind him. "I'm going to touch your lower spine now," she said calmly. "Just adjusting the brace. Nothing invasive." "Don't touch," he started. But her hands were already there, quick, gentle, confident. He stiffened, and then a breath of relief escaped his lips. The pain he hadn't even realized had become his new normal. Eased. "Better?" she asked. He hated how genuine her voice sounded. He didn't answer. "Right," she said, stepping back. "I'll be here every morning at 8. "I didn't hire you." "No," she said. "But someone had to show up anyway." The elevator chimed again. Then she was gone. That night, Soren sat alone at the edge of his bed, fingers curled tightly around the bed frame. He didn't know what annoyed him more, that she touched him without flinching, or that, for the first time since the accident, he felt something other than anger. The next morning, she returned. No fanfare. No waiting for an invitation. "I'm placing the meds at your 2 o'clock, she said, the moment she stepped in. "I'll adjust your brace after your back's warmed up. You're tight across the right shoulder blade. I told Rael to cancel." He didn't. "You're persistent. I'm efficient." She moved around him with the same precision as before, narrating each move. "I'm now lifting your arm slightly. I'll rotate your elbow. Tell me if you feel pain. You talk too much." "I talk so you're not surprised." "Is that how you deal with fragile men? Narrate everything?" "I deal with wounded men by giving them a choice, heal or stay broken." He turned his head toward her. "Is this your therapy approach? Tough love?" "No," she said. "Just the truth." By the 3rd day, she was part of the space. Soren never acknowledged it aloud, but her scent lingered long after she left, something between citrus and warm linen. Not floral, not sweet, just clean. She didn't treat him like a broken thing. She didn't hover. She didn't whisper. She simply was. "Why this job?" "Because I've seen what happens when people give up," she replied. "And you think I've given up?" "No," she said. "But you're circling the edge. You sound awfully sure of yourself." "I'm sure of the process, not the outcome." He smirked. "You talk like someone who lost something too." A pause. Then, softly, "We all do." He didn't push further, but her voice stayed with him after she left. Not just the words, the tone, the quiet courage in it. The routine had become familiar. Not comfortable, but familiar. Every morning at exactly 8, the elevator door would open, and with it came her presence, steady, unshaken, and unapologetically herself. Alina Rowe didn't bring warmth like a sunrise. She brought it like firewood stacked in the cold, practical, deliberate, slow to burn. And that's what unnerved Soren most. She didn't rush their sessions. She didn't fill the room with empty optimism. But she also didn't allow space for bitterness to settle. She kept things moving, stretching, bracing, speaking only when necessary. It was her hands that unsettled him, not because they were soft, but because they were honest. "I'm going to reposition your hip," she said one morning. He flinched as her fingers grazed his side. "Relax," she said. "You say that like it's easy. You tense before I even touch you." Because I don't like surprises, and yet you let me in your space every day." She adjusted his leg gently, guiding it across the therapy table. He inhaled slowly. "You always narrate like this?" he asked. "Yes, especially with patients who can't see what I'm doing." "Do you ever go quiet?" "Only when I'm not needed." He tilted his head slightly in her direction. "I haven't fired you yet. That's not the same as saying I'm needed." Silence. Later that day, Rael entered as Alina packed her things. "She's good," he whispered once she left. "She's precise," Soren replied. "That a compliment?" "It's an observation." Rael chuckled. "You don't complain about her voice anymore." Soren didn't answer, because the truth was, he waited for it. The next day, Soren noticed it again. The way Alina's hand lingered for just a fraction longer on his wrist, the subtle shift in her breath when their skin touched. She didn't flinch. She didn't avoid closeness, but she also didn't indulge it, and maybe that was what pulled him closer. During their session, she leaned down to fasten a strap across his shoulder brace. Her breath grazed his jawline. He stiffened. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes." He stopped breathing. "I didn't realize." Alina paused, then moved back without a word, but that moment stayed, hung in the air like static. By the end of the week, the friction between them had transformed, still unspoken, but alive. One night, long after she'd left, Soren sat in his study, blind, yes, but attuned to everything that mattered. He could still smell her. Not perfume. Her, like sunlight against clean skin, warm cotton, a scent that didn't belong in a space built on steel and silence. He pressed his hand over his heart and realized something terrifying. He missed her. The next morning, as she adjusted a pulse monitor at his wrist, their fingers brushed again. He didn't pull away. She didn't either. It wasn't deliberate, but it wasn't accidental. "Your pulse just spiked," she said lightly. "You touched me. Should I stop?" "No." He waited, heartbeat thudding. Then her fingers slid against his palm, slowly, deliberately, and for one fleeting second, he wasn't blind. He was wide awake. Rain tapped lightly against the floor-to-ceiling windows, but inside, the air between them was heavier than any storm. Alina knelt beside Soren's chair, adjusting the ankle brace she'd recommended last week. Her fingertips moved with quiet confidence. She knew exactly where his pain lived and how to touch it without making it worse. "Shift your weight to the right," she said slowly. He did, guided by her voice. Her hand braced his thigh. His muscles trembled, not from weakness, from restraint. "You're holding tension again," she noted. "Maybe I'm not used to being touched." "I don't believe that," she said calmly. He smirked. "You calling me a liar?" "I'm calling you a man used to controlling the terms." Silence. Then his voice dropped. "You're dangerous." Her hands stilled. "Why?" "Because I forget what I am when you're around." "And what are you?" "Broken, blind, half a man." She looked up, even though he couldn't see her gaze. "That's not what I see." He turned his face toward her voice. "That's because you're the only person who doesn't look at me with pity." "No," she corrected. "It's because I'm not looking at you at all." He inhaled. Her voice softened. "I listen to how you move, how you breathe when you're pushing past pain. I feel the strength in your arms when you grip my wrist without realizing, and I hear the ache in your voice every time you pretend you don't care." A long silence stretched between them. Then he said quietly, "I dream of you." She froze. Her heartbeat, once calm, sped just enough for him to notice. "I don't see you," he continued, "but I feel you. In my sleep, in the dark, you come to me, not with words, just touch." Alina sat back slightly, unsure of what to say. "Do you want that to stop?" she asked finally. Later that evening, Alina was gathering her things. She moved more slowly than usual. Soren sat still on the couch, head tilted back, his expression unreadable. "I think you're here to ruin me," he murmured. She paused at the door. "Ruin is a strange word for healing," she replied. "I don't need saving." "I'm not trying to save you," she said, "but I'm trying to show you that not everything you feel is a weakness." He scoffed, then said nothing. She turned the doorknob. "You let me in," she said, "even if it was only a crack." "That's more than I expected. You're still here," he said quietly. "For now." That night, his dreams weren't silent. He felt her again, fingertips tracing his jawline, lips brushing his neck, breath against his collarbone. But this time, he wasn't passive. He reached for her, pulled her close, and in the dream, he saw, not her face, but light, just light and warmth. The next morning, she didn't speak as much. Neither did he, but everything between them said more than words could. And when she adjusted the brace on his arm and her chest brushed his shoulder, neither of them moved away. Not this time. The therapy wall was cold beneath his palms. Soren stood, spine braced, hands outstretched, facing nothing, but sensing everything. Alina stood behind him, her voice steady, guiding his every motion. Lift your right leg 2 inches. Hold, lower. He obeyed. Her hand touched his lower back. Again, he moved, slower this time. She adjusted the brace at his waist, her fingers brushing the skin just above the band of his shorts. He swallowed. Something wrong? She asked. No. You stopped breathing again. You do that to me. Alina didn't respond. Instead, she stepped closer. Her hip brushed his thigh. Her voice dipped lower. You can rest if you need to. I don't need rest, he replied. I need answers. About what? About why I think about your hands more than my future. That silenced her. Soren turned his head slightly, searching the space between them. I can't see you, he said, but every night I lie here imagining how you'd feel under me, the shape of you, the heat. Alina remained quiet, but her breath changed, just slightly. He could tell. Say something, he whispered. Would you still want to know me, she said carefully, if you could see my face? I already do. They didn't touch after that. Not the way they both wanted to. But the hunger between them grew louder. Later that day, as she packed up her therapy bag, he said, Come sit. Alina hesitated. That's not part of the session. I'm not asking as your patient. She crossed the room and sat beside him on the edge of the couch. Soren turned slightly. Tell me something about you. She folded her hands. I used to love dance, ballet, modern. I stopped after my brother died. He nodded. How? Car crash. His chest tightened. I didn't know. I never told you. They sat in silence for a moment. I used to think I'd never heal, she said. And then one day, I stopped trying to heal and just started living again. I wouldn't know how. You will, she said softly. Even without your eyes. He lifted a hand, hovering inches from her face. May I? He asked. Alina closed the space, guided his hand gently to her cheek. He ran his fingers down her jaw, across her lips. Slow, focused. You're warm, he said. So are you. Their faces were close now. Too close, and yet not close enough. He didn't kiss her. Not yet. But everything about the moment whispered that he would. Soon. It started with a slip. Not of the body, but of the guard between them. During a late afternoon session, Soren stumbled, just slightly, while stepping down from the resistance bandstand. His legs, still recovering, wobbled beneath him. Alina reached out, quick as always, catching him by the waist. I've got you, she said. Her hands were firm, steady. Soren's breath brushed against her neck. I know, he whispered. She didn't let go. Neither did he. Minutes passed. Neither moved. Their chests rose and fell in tandem. Finally, she eased him into the chair beside the mirrored wall. But instead of retreating, she remained kneeling in front of him. You okay? She asked, brushing a curl of damp hair from his brow. His hand reached for her instinctively, eyes blind, but intent precise. Fingertips grazed her cheek. Then, her jaw. Then, he found her lips. A breathless kiss, exploratory, unplanned, soft at first, then deeper, raw, hungry. Alina didn't pull away. She leaned into him, her hands gripping his thighs, her mouth opening beneath his. And still, they didn't speak, but they both knew what was happening, what had been happening for weeks. They didn't undress, not yet, but her body climbed into his lap. His hands traced her back, learning her shape. Her breaths turned uneven. Quick. His head tilted, his lips exploring her jaw, her collarbone, the space behind her ear. You're not afraid of me, he whispered. No, she breathed. You should be. Why? Because I don't know how to want without devouring. She leaned closer, pressing her forehead to his. Then devour slowly, she said. I'm not going anywhere. The moment held them in place. A still frame of fire held back by breath. When she finally eased herself off his lap, neither of them could speak right away. She adjusted her clothes, ran a hand through her hair. I'll be back tomorrow, she said quietly. You always say that, he replied. This time, I need you to believe it. He nodded, and as she stepped away, he called out, soft, barely audible. Alina. She turned. I didn't imagine that, did I? No, she said. You felt me. That was real. That night, Soren didn't sleep. He lay awake, hand pressed to the spot where she had sat, heart pounding with something far more terrifying than desire. Hope. It was the tremor in his legs that betrayed him. The session had pushed his limits, 30 minutes of balance drills, resistance bands, controlled breathing, and slow squats. His legs, though stronger, were not ready for standing unsupported for so long. Alina moved to steady him, arms wrapping around his torso. I've got you, she said again, and this time there was no distance left between them. Her chest pressed against his, her face near his neck, her hands at his ribs. He reached out, not in desperation, but in instinct, one hand to her cheek. Fingers slid down the curve of her jaw, then her lips. It wasn't a question. It wasn't planned. He kissed her blindly, hungrily, like a man drowning who had finally found breath. And she didn't retreat. Alina melted into the kiss, her fingers tangling into his hair, her mouth parting beneath his with need that had been simmering for far too long. They moved together as if every barrier had been waiting to break. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her into his lap. She straddled him. Neither said a word. There was no need. His hands slid down her back, one exploring the small curve just above her hips. Hers gripped his shoulders, grounding herself against the very thing that made her tremble. He kissed her neck, just below the ear, then lower, tasting salt and skin. She gasped softly, and for a moment, the world felt alive again. But they didn't go further, not that night. Their breath slowed, their foreheads touched, their bodies, still trembling, eventually separated. Alina pulled away gently, brushing her fingers along his cheek before standing. I should go, she said, voice hoarse. He didn't stop her. She walked to the elevator slowly, as though unsure she was making the right decision. And before she stepped inside, she turned around. Soren had shifted his face toward her direction. Waiting. Don't rewrite what just happened, she said. I won't. Then don't destroy it either. When the elevator doors closed, he felt the cold settle back in. But it was different now. This wasn't the emptiness of solitude. This was the ache of wanting more. That night, he didn't sleep again. Not because of pain, but because he kept replaying it all. Her weight in his lap, the heat of her breath, the way she didn't flinch, the way she gave in like she had been waiting just as long. And how he already knew. One taste would never be enough. The next morning came too quickly. Alina arrived as usual, calm, professional, her bag over her shoulder and a towel draped across her arm. But everything was different. She could feel it before he even opened his mouth. Soren sat stiffly in his chair, jaw tight, arms crossed. The air around him had changed. Cold, guarded. You ready to begin? She asked. No session today. She paused. Are you in pain? No, I don't understand. He turned his head toward her, voice clipped. I don't need therapy from someone playing nurse and lover. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me? That kiss was a mistake. Alina stood still, holding his words like glass in her hands, sharp, fragile. You didn't seem to think so last night. That was weakness, he muttered. From both of us. No, that was real. I don't need your sympathy, Alina. Her voice went quiet, firm. Do you really think that's what this is? He didn't answer. I kissed you because I wanted to. Because I felt something, she continued. But if you're too afraid to admit that, then say so. Don't insult me with the word sympathy. He clenched his fists. You saw a man who can't walk, can't see, can't be your equal. I saw a man who kissed me like his life depended on it. She stepped closer. And I let you, not because I felt sorry for you, but because I wanted you. His breath caught, but he said nothing. You think I come here every day because I pity you? She snapped. I come here because I respect you, because I care. Silence. She shook her head. But maybe you don't want to be cared for. Maybe all you want is a fight. I want space. Then you should have never pulled me in. Alina turned. She didn't pack her bag. She didn't say goodbye. She simply walked toward the elevator, shoes clicking softly across the marble floor. And Soren let her, even though every fiber in his chest screamed at him to stop her. After the door closed behind her, the silence returned. But it was different now. It wasn't empty. It was loud, ruthless. Every word she'd said echoed in his ears. I let you because I wanted to. You pulled me in. I respected you. He remained seated for hours. Didn't touch the water bottle by his chair. Didn't respond to Rael when he called. Didn't move when the sun lowered and the room darkened. He only breathed. Barely. That night, for the first time since the accident, he cried. Not because of pain, not because of blindness, but because he'd finally been seen and pushed it away. Hello, my beautiful family. If you are still here with me, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel because what happens next will keep you at the edge of your sit. Now let's continue. 3 days. She hadn't returned. No messages, no calls, no gentle footsteps in the morning, no citrus warmth trailing through the room like it used to. Just emptiness, the kind that had weight. Soren sat in the same armchair by the window, unmoving, not out of stubbornness, but because he didn't trust his legs anymore, not without her voice guiding him, not without her hands adjusting his brace or telling him where to reach next. Rael came in once a day, brought food, tidied up, left without pressing too hard. But today, he lingered. You haven't eaten in 2 days, Rael said flatly. I'm not hungry. You haven't slept either. Silence. She's not coming back unless you ask her to. Soren shifted slightly. His voice was quiet, bitter. I told her to leave. You told her a lot of things you didn't mean. I told her the truth. No. You told her your fear. That stung. More than Soren expected. Rael walked to the minibar, poured a glass of water, and set it on the table beside Soren. Then paused. You remember how you used to talk about building veil designs? Soren didn't respond. You said no one had your vision, that you could see possibilities where others only saw risks. Still nothing. Rael continued, voice lower now. But you didn't build that empire alone. You listened. You let others shape your drafts, refine your instincts. You let people in, just enough, to make something stronger. He turned toward the elevator. She's not your therapist anymore, Soren. She's something else. A long silence followed. Then, from Soren's cracked voice, call her. Rael froze, then nodded. After he left, Soren reached for the glass of water. His fingers knocked it over. Liquid spread across the table, dripping to the floor. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he rested his elbows on his knees, buried his face in his hands, and whispered, I'm sorry. But she wasn't there to hear it. That night, the penthouse felt colder than blindness. It was the kind of chill that crept under the skin, quiet, heavy, inescapable. And for the first time in years, he didn't care about pride or perception or control. He just wanted her, not as a nurse, not as a helper, as Alina, the woman who challenged him, steadied him, kissed him like he was whole, and walked away when he wasn't ready to believe it. He laid in bed, sheets tangled, heart pacing like a man waiting on news from a war he started. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, he whispered into the darkness, I can't see you, but I feel you, everywhere. The elevator chimed. Soren didn't lift his head. He knew it wasn't Rael. Rael always announced himself, always tapped twice before stepping in, always shuffled a bit, out of habit. This person moved differently. No hesitation, no sound, except for the light tread of careful, confident steps. Then he felt it, her scent, that same blend, citrus and warmth, faint but undeniable. His throat tightened. Still, he didn't speak. Neither did she. She moved closer, step by deliberate step, until she stood before him. The space between them was barely a breath. And then she reached out and took his hand. She didn't squeeze it. She didn't ask permission. She just lifted it and placed it directly over her heart. I'm still here, she said. Soren's breath hitched. His other hand rose slowly, trembling slightly, as he reached to touch her cheek. Why? He whispered. Because you didn't let me fall. He swallowed hard. But I pushed you. You were scared. I still am. I know. They stayed like that for minutes, silent, connected, breathing through everything that had passed between them. He finally stood, using her as anchor. No cane, no support, just her. He didn't speak again. Didn't need to. She guided him to the couch, sat beside him, held his hand, rested her head gently on his shoulder. Eventually, she broke the silence. "I didn't come back because you called," she said. "I came back because I felt you call me long before your voice ever did." His chest heaved. "I wanted to say I was sorry. You don't have to say it. But I am. I know." He turned toward her, lips brushing her hair. "I don't deserve you. I'm not a reward," she said. "I'm a choice. Just like love." The clock ticked softly in the background. The city moved outside the windows, and inside the penthouse, something shifted. The silence wasn't cold anymore. It wasn't punishment. It was peace. Later, she stood to leave, but he held her wrist gently. "Stay," he said. Alina looked down at him, his face open, vulnerable, full of something rare. Hope. She nodded once, then slipped out of her shoes, and stayed. The first time she stayed the night, they didn't make love. They didn't even undress. They lay side by side, fully clothed, hands intertwined, bodies close enough to share breath. It wasn't restraint, it was reverence. Soren woke before dawn, not from pain, but from awareness. Alina's body was curled gently into his side. Her head rested against his chest. One leg draped over his. Her skin was soft, her breathing slow. He reached up, threading his fingers through her hair. She stirred. "Morning," she murmured. He kissed the top of her head. Still here, she echoed. Later, as the sun started climbing the edge of the sky, she stood and moved toward the window. He couldn't see her, but he knew where she was. "Describe yourself," he said softly. She paused. "Why?" "Because I want to know the way you see yourself." She turned, voice gentle. "All right." She came back, took his hand, and placed it at the hem of her shirt. "I'm lifting it now," she said. "Just to your fingertips." She guided his hand upward. "I have a scar here," she whispered, placing his fingers just below her ribs. "Bike accident. When I was 9. He traced the faint line. Then his hand moved higher. She brought it to the slope of her breast. "I'm not perfect," she said, "but I'm real." His thumb brushed her skin. "You're more than I imagined," he said. "I wasn't asking you to imagine." "I'm not," he said. "I'm remembering." They moved slowly. No rush, no tension, only intention. She slipped her shirt off completely and let him explore with hands that searched not just for form, but meaning. He memorized the lines of her body like they were pages in a story he needed to understand. She narrated quietly. "My shoulders are slightly uneven. One curves more because I used to dance and always favored my left. My thighs are stronger than they look. I walk fast. My stomach isn't flat. I've lived too much life for it to be." And he touched each part with care, as if validating everything she revealed. He whispered, "I've touched 1,000 things. None of them ever made me feel like this." She smiled against his palm. "Then don't stop." When they finally lay down again, her bare skin against his chest, he didn't ask for more. He simply held her. And in that moment, it was enough. For the first time since the day he lost his sight, he felt whole. Not because something had been returned to him, but because something had been given without condition. Rain tapped against the glass again. But this time, the sound was a backdrop, not a barrier. Inside the room, their breaths were slower, synced, deliberate. The space between them no longer held hesitation, only invitation. Alina sat on the edge of the bed, one leg tucked under her. She watched him, shirtless, vulnerable, waiting for permission he didn't know how to ask. "Touch me," she said softly. "I already am." "No," she corrected, guiding his hand to her chest. "Don't touch like I'm glass. Touch like I'm yours." He moved slowly, fingertips over her collarbone, down her arms, across the dip of her waist. She closed her eyes, not because he couldn't see, but because she wanted to feel it all too. He leaned in, brushing his lips over her neck. "Tell me what you feel," she whispered. "You," he said, "everywhere." Her hand trailed down his abdomen, stopping just above his waistband. "I want you," she said, "but only if you want all of me, not just what I give you in pieces." He responded not with words, but by pressing his mouth against hers in a kiss that didn't just take, but offered. They undressed slowly. No urgency, no rush to climax, just discovery. She guided his hands to her hips, her thighs, her lower back. "This is the curve you rest your head on at night," she murmured. He smiled. "I know it by heart." She straddled him, skin on skin, warmth on warmth. They breathed into each other. He ran his hands along her spine, anchoring himself in the shape of her. "I've never wanted to see something more in my life," he said quietly. Alina leaned down, her lips brushing his ear. "You already do." When she sank onto him, there was no gasp, no scream, just a long exhale, like surrender. They moved slowly, rhythm syncing with the rain outside. His hands guided her hips, hers pressed into his chest. Their foreheads touched. Mouths met. No words, only breath, only need. He whispered things between kisses. "I want to remember this. I want to wake up to your scent every day. I want to earn the way you look at me." And she whispered back, "You're not broken. You're not less. You're more than you know." When they finished, they didn't roll away. They held each other, tangled and still. And in that quiet, Soren whispered, "I don't know what I did to deserve you." Alina smiled, brushing a thumb across his cheek. "You opened the door. That was enough." Outside, the rain stopped. Inside, something bloomed. Not lust, not just love, but faith. Faith in what could grow when the heart is ready. It began with a flicker, not pain, not memory. Light, soft, foreign, barely there, like the brush of a feather across the inside of his eyelids. Soren sat upright in bed, breath held, hands gripping the sheets. The world was still dark, but no longer blank. A shimmer hovered beneath his closed eyes. Pale, faint, but real. He opened them fully. Nothing definite, just the awareness that something had changed. He didn't say a word. Not that day, not the one after. Alina noticed something, though. The way he tilted his head when she opened the blinds. How he paused longer during their walks down the corridor. How he blinked faster, as if adjusting to something he hadn't expected to feel again. During a morning stretch, she spoke gently. "You seem different." He hesitated, then lied. "Less pain." She watched him, curious, but didn't press. Instead, she leaned forward, brushing hair from his forehead. "You've been glowing lately. Blind men don't glow. Love does that." At night, he lay awake while she slept beside him. He opened his eyes and stared into the darkness, not to see, but to feel. And every now and then, there it was again. That shimmer. It wasn't yet a shape, or a shadow, but it was something, and that something felt like a door cracking open. The day it became undeniable. He was standing at the window, hand on the glass, when the blinds lifted automatically with the timer. The sun hit his face, and through closed lids, it blazed. He staggered back. Alina was in the kitchen. He turned toward her, dazed. "Alina." She wiped her hands on a towel and walked to him quickly. "What's wrong?" His voice broke. "I see it." Her eyes widened. "What?" "Light," he said, "through my eyelids." "I see it." She froze, then slowly reached up and cupped his face. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "I don't know how. I didn't want to say anything, but it's been happening." Tears filled her eyes. "You kept that to yourself?" "I wasn't sure it was real." "And now?" He smiled, a fragile, beautiful thing. "Now I believe it is." She hugged him, not as a therapist, not as a lover, but as the one who walked him through the valley, and never once let go. Later that day, Rael came by. Soren told him. Rael stood silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "She did what no one else could." Soren agreed. "She gave me the courage to hope again." That night, Alina curled against his chest, fingers trailing softly down his arm. He whispered, "You told me not to chase miracles." She smiled. "I didn't want to give you false promises." "This isn't false." "No," she whispered. "It's faith." And for the first time, the darkness didn't feel endless. It felt like dawn. It happened a week later. No announcement, no warning, just a laugh. Alina's laugh. She was in the kitchen, radio playing something upbeat. sleeves rolled to her elbows, hair pulled into a messy knot. She was barefoot, swaying slightly as she chopped vegetables, laughing at something the host on the radio said. Soren stood by the hallway, fingers resting against the wall for balance, eyes open, because the light didn't hurt anymore. And then, suddenly, he saw her, not a shimmer, not a shadow. Her silhouette, the shape of her mouth curved into a smile. Her profile, radiant and real. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. He blinked. She was still there, alive in color and movement. His throat tightened. He stepped forward. No cane, no handrail, just trust. The floor beneath him felt steady for the first time in months. "Alina," he whispered. She turned, her brows furrowed at the sound in his voice. "What is it?" she asked. He took another step, then another. She moved toward him instinctively, hand reaching out, and he caught it midair, lifted her hand to his lips, then to his cheek. "I see you," he said, voice breaking. She froze. The towel dropped from her other hand. "Soren." He nodded, eyes filled with tears. "I see you." She didn't speak for a long time, just stared at him, at the man who had once been swallowed by pride, broken by silence, trapped in grief, now standing in front of her, seeing, really seeing. Her eyes brimmed. She cupped his face. "You're crying." "So are you," he whispered. She laughed through the tears. "Don't blink," she said. "I want to stay in your eyes. I've been seeing you long before this," he replied. "But now I can witness you." They sat down together, side by side on the couch. She studied his expression. He studied hers. The quiet wonder of discovery passed between them like a shared breath. "You're more beautiful than I imagined," he said. She chuckled. "I didn't think you were imagining at all." "I lied," he smiled. "I knew." He brushed her hair behind her ear, lingering at her cheekbone. "I didn't think this would happen." "I didn't either," she said. "But sometimes the body just remembers how to believe." "Do you think I'll keep improving?" "I don't know," she replied. "But I know what's real now. This moment." He nodded slowly. "This moment is everything." They kissed again, not with hunger, but with reverence, like two people stepping into the light together after a long, aching winter. The sun had just begun to dip, casting a golden haze across the rooftop of the building he once called a prison. Now it was a place of meaning. The same terrace where he once sat alone in silence now shimmered with string lights Rael helped install earlier that afternoon. A single table stood in the center. White linen, 2 chairs, a vase with her favorite, calla lilies, and him. Soren stood unaided, no brace, no support, just faith in his feet, in his future, in her. Alina arrived just after 7. Rael had sent her a simple message. He said, "Meet him on the roof." When she stepped out of the elevator, her breath caught. There he was, in a black shirt, sleeves rolled to the forearms, hair still damp from a nervous shower, a soft smile barely held at the corners of his mouth. And those eyes, they weren't fully healed, but they saw her. And that was enough. "You clean up well," she said, voice teasing. He grinned. "Wait till you see what I planned. You did all this." Rael helped. She walked toward him. He reached out, found her hand instinctively, and pulled her gently into his arms. "I used to think proposals had to be grand," he said. "Helicopters, flash mobs, paparazzi." She raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Now you think they just need one thing?" "You," he whispered. He pulled something from his pocket. A ring, not flashy, not enormous, simple, elegant, clear as the life he wanted. He didn't kneel. Not because he couldn't, but because this moment didn't need drama, only truth. He held her hand, placed the ring in her palm. "I don't need perfect," he said. "I don't need healed. I just need you." She blinked fast, holding back tears. "You've had me," she said, "since the day you stopped pretending you didn't." Soren's voice softened. "I used to think vision was the most powerful gift I had, but I was wrong. Loving you without seeing you, that changed everything." She looked down at the ring, then slid it onto her own finger. "Yes," she said, simply. No speech, no theatrics. Just yes. The lights above them flickered slightly as the sky deepened into a soft navy hue. He kissed her hand, then her lips. And the rooftop, once a fortress, became sacred ground. They sat at the table, barely touching the meal Rael had prepared, talking, laughing, letting the quiet wrap around them without weight. Soren reached across the table, touching her fingertips. I want you to know something. What? You didn't save me. She looked surprised. You reminded me I was still alive, and that made all the difference. After the rooftop dinner, they didn't rush to call family or share the news. There was no champagne pop, no camera flashes, no posts to announce what had just happened. Because this wasn't for the world, it was for them, two souls who had walked through fire and chosen to stay. Back inside the penthouse, the ring still new on her finger, Alina slipped off her shoes and curled up beside him on the couch. He traced her knuckles with his thumb. She looked at him, eyes full, soft, certain. How long have you been planning that? She asked. Since the first time I heard your laugh echo through the living room, he said. Before I ever saw your face. Her smile faltered, in a beautiful way. You were already in love? I think I was already found. He leaned back, letting his head rest against the cushions. I didn't believe in love the way people talked about it. I thought it was a concept sold in movies and engagement ads, not something real, not something for someone like me. Alina rested her chin on his shoulder. And now? He turned his face toward hers. Now, I think it was waiting for me to be stripped of everything else before I could recognize it. She kissed him, slow, sweet, certain. Not because she had to, but because it was the only answer that mattered. Later that night, they sat on the floor, backs against the couch, lights dimmed. No music, no distractions, just stories. She told him about her childhood, how her mother used to read to her while brushing her hair. He told her about his first design pitch, how his hand shook so badly he dropped the entire mock-up in front of the boardroom. She laughed so hard she spilled tea on the rug. He didn't care. It felt like something that should stay. Then her tone shifted. Soren, yeah? Do you think we would have fallen in love if none of this had happened? He didn't rush to answer. Then he said, no. She blinked. Really? I think I would have noticed you, been intrigued, maybe even pursued you. But I wouldn't have needed you. He turned fully to face her. And I would have missed everything real about you, because I would have been too caught up in control, in ego, in sight. She nodded slowly, eyes shimmering. That's honest, she whispered. It's the only way I know how to love you now. She rested her head on his shoulder. He leaned into her warmth. There were no more games to play, no more walls to maintain. Only forward, together. That night, as they fell asleep tangled together on the floor instead of the bed, he whispered, full circle. She hummed. What? You met me at my lowest, and now you'll walk with me into everything else. Alina smiled into his chest. And I won't let go. They chose a garden, not a ballroom, not a cathedral. A simple garden tucked behind an old stone house on the edge of the city, where ivy curled along brick walls and the breeze carried the scent of lavender and rain-washed soil. They didn't invite hundreds, just a few. The ones who mattered. No orchestra, just a string trio. No elaborate altar, just a pathway of pale petals leading to a low wooden arch. Soren walked it alone, no arm to guide him, no cane, just focus. Every step forward a quiet defiance of what was once impossible. Every heartbeat steady, until he reached the halfway mark and stopped, waiting. Then she appeared. Alina, barefoot, hair down, dress simple, ivory, fitted to her shape like a secret she was no longer hiding. She didn't walk slowly. She walked with intent. Toward him, always toward him. The guests stood. Many wept, not for spectacle, but for the quiet power of witnessing something earned. She reached him, smiling. He smiled back. Hands found hands. And the world grew still. There was no priest, no script, just them, face to face, breath to breath. Soren spoke first, his voice clear, steady, unshaken. I was blind long before I lost my sight, he said. I saw numbers, blueprints, targets. But I never saw people. I never saw myself. He turned his head slightly, his eyes catching the light. Then you came in. You didn't try to fix me. You didn't ask me to be less angry or less broken. You just stayed, even when I shoved you away. He swallowed. And because you stayed, I learned to see. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them. She wanted him to see them, to see all of her. Then she spoke. "I didn't fall in love with your strength," she said. "I fell in love with your fight, with your silence, with the way you held pain like it was part of your skin." She reached up, touched his cheek. "You taught me love isn't loud. It's steady. It's showing up when you don't feel like you're enough, and choosing each other anyway." There was no need for rings. They'd already been exchanged weeks ago. Now, they only sealed the moment with a kiss. Soft, long, and when he pulled back, Soren whispered against her lips, "I see the world again, because I found the only part of it that mattered." The guests stood in silent awe. The string trio played a quiet melody, and two people who once walked in darkness now stood in light. Together. There was no grand reception, no chandeliers, no stages, no mic checks, just a long table beneath an open sky, draped in white, candles flickering down the center. Friends gathered close. Laughter carried over wine and shared plates. A breeze moved through the trees like a blessing, and at the head of the table, Soren and Alina, not as a miracle, not as a headline, but as husband and wife. Soren held her hand beneath the table. He didn't squeeze it. He just rested there, connected, grounded, whole. Every so often, someone came over to congratulate them. There were hugs, toasts, gentle jokes about how long it took him to figure out he was in love. He took them all with a smile. Even Riel's speech, which included a line that made the entire table laugh, and Alina bury her face in her hands. I told him he was falling in love with a woman adjusting his spine. He said I was delusional. Now I'm the best man, so who's delusional now? Later in the evening, the guests slowly began to trickle out. Alina stayed behind to help clear dessert plates while Soren stood beneath a string of soft lights near the garden path. He watched her, actually watched her, hair falling loose from its braid, lips curled into a half smile as she said goodbye to Rael's wife. Eyes warm, alive. He memorized her again, this time with more than hands, more than breath. When she came to him, barefoot and quiet, he pulled her in by the waist. "Dance with me. No music. We don't need it." She rested her head on his chest, and they swayed, barely moving. The moment didn't need rhythm, just presence. "Do you remember," he murmured, "how we used to sit in silence for hours?" "I remember how I used to talk more than you. You still do." She smiled against his chest. "Do you remember the first time I touched your hand? I remember thinking you were trouble, and now, still trouble. Just the kind I want to wake up next to." The moon rose behind them. The lights above flickered gently. He looked down at her, then closed his eyes, not because he couldn't see, but because feeling her, here, now, was still his favorite way to know her. They didn't rush to leave. They didn't need a getaway car or a dramatic exit. They walked down the path slowly, her hand in his, shoes in her other hand, the soft gravel crunching beneath their feet. No cane, no audience, just two people, returning to the life they had built from ashes and choice. As they reached the car, he opened the door for her, then slid in beside her, hand finding hers again. And he whispered, "Thank you for loving me before I remembered how to love myself." She leaned in, kissed his cheek and said, "You never forgot. You just needed someone to remind you." The engine started. The night stretched ahead, but they weren't racing away from anything. They were driving into everything that waited. Together, they didn't rush home. They took the long way back, windows down, night air soft against their skin. The city shimmered quietly around them, alive yet distant. It wasn't silence that filled the car, it was certainty. Inside the penthouse, they didn't turn on the lights. The moon was enough. Soft silver poured through the windows, stretching shadows across the floor like fabric. Soren reached for her hand, guiding her into the bedroom as if he'd done it every night of his life. And maybe, in a way, he had. Even in darkness, he had always known how to find her. Alina stood at the foot of the bed and began unfastening the back of her dress. It slipped off slowly, pooling at her feet. She didn't look away. Neither did he. He stepped toward her, eyes never leaving her skin, taking in every curve, every freckle, every scar. She had never looked more real to him, or more sacred. He brought his hands to her face, fingers brushing her cheeks, tracing down to her collarbone. Then his lips followed. A kiss beneath her jaw, a trail down her throat, hands gliding over her back, down her waist, reverent and sure. She unbuttoned his shirt slowly, pressed kisses to his chest, ran her tongue lightly along his collarbone as he exhaled sharply. There was no performance in this, only presence. They fell onto the bed together, gently, laughing, kissing, breathing. His hands explored her like a prayer, memorizing the slope of her hips, the softness of her thighs, the way her breath hitched when he whispered her name. Her mouth found his again and again, open and honest, letting him in deeper each time. She wrote him slow, rhythmic, deliberate. Her fingers gripped his wrists as his hands slid up her sides. Every movement was a sentence, every thrust a confession. "I see you," he murmured, again and again, and not just with his eyes, with his hands, his mouth, his soul. She leaned down, kissed his jaw, and whispered against his skin, "You are my home." Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes as she moved on top of him, hips rolling, heart open, unhidden. He kissed them away, one by one. "You're my miracle," he said, voice trembling. She slowed her rhythm, cupped his face between her palms, and whispered back, "So are you." They came undone together. No urgency, no desperation, just release. Peaceful, pure. After, they stayed tangled in the sheets, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing circles along her shoulder. The air was warm, the silence soft. "I want to remember every second," he said. "You will," she promised. He looked down at her, eyes clear, full of light. "I already do." 1 year later, the penthouse didn't feel cold anymore. The walls were warmer, the light brighter, the silence no longer empty, but full of the rhythm of life. Shoes by the door, a small blanket tossed over the couch, half-read books, a toy giraffe resting on the windowsill. Soren Vale sat in the nursery, holding a bottle in one hand and a tiny squirming daughter in the other. Beside him, Alina rocked her son in her arms, eyes sleepy but content, smiles soft with disbelief that this was real. Twins, a girl and a boy. Perfect. Whole. He looked down at the tiny face nestled into the crook of his elbow. She blinked up at him with wide, unfocused eyes. "I used to think I'd never see again," he murmured, "and now I get to watch you blink at the world like it's yours to hold." Alina chuckled from her chair, voice barely above a whisper. "She already owns you. She already owns everything." The birth hadn't been easy. Complications, scares, long nights. But when they heard the cries, 2 of them, and saw those tiny bodies emerge into the world, all the pain collapsed into wonder. Soren had cried harder than either baby. And Alina, even through the exhaustion, reached for his hand and whispered, "We made light out of nothing." Their daughter was named Isla, their son Eli, names that felt like mourning. Soren had stepped back from his company, handing over the reins to a team he trusted. He now spent his days working from home, consulting on adaptive design projects, investing in medical research, and running a nonprofit that helped patients with vision loss access experimental treatment. But his favorite project? Being present. He still couldn't see perfectly. Some days were clearer than others. Light shifted, faces blurred, but he no longer feared the darkness. Because she was there, because they were, and because his eyes were no longer his only way of seeing. That evening, after the twins had been put to sleep and the last bottle rinsed, Soren and Alina stood out on the balcony. She leaned into his side, head resting against his shoulder. The city stretched beneath them, alive, breathing, just like them. "Did you ever think it would look like this?" she asked. "Never." "Are you happy?" He turned to her. "No," he said. "I'm more than that. I'm awake." She smiled. He continued. "I thought I had lost everything. My sight, my worth, my ability to connect. But the truth is, I just never learned to feel. You gave me that. You gave me them. And somehow in all this, I found myself again." Alina kissed his cheek. "You were never lost," she whispered. "You just needed someone to sit with you in the dark until the light came back." They stayed like that for a long while. No need for words. Just wind, heartbeat, breath, and the quiet sound of 2 babies dreaming behind glass. Soren closed his eyes and smiled, because even if it all disappeared tomorrow, even if the world dimmed again, he would never stop seeing her, or the life they built, because the light never really left. It had only waited for love to unlock it. If this story touched something in you, don't just scroll away. Take a moment. breathe, and think about how many people out there feel trapped in silence, stuck in their own kind of darkness, waiting for something or someone to help them believe again. Maybe you were that someone once. Maybe you're still waiting. Either way, you're not alone. This wasn't just a story about a wealthy CEO. It was about all of us, about how life can break us open in places we never expected, and how love, real love, doesn't rush in to fix what's broken. It chooses to stay, to sit beside us, to believe for us until we remember how to believe again. So, if that message meant something to you, tap the like button, not just for the story, but for the moments it reminded you of. Drop a comment. Tell us what part moved you. What line stayed with you? What moment made you feel seen? Share this video with someone who's healing, someone who's fighting, someone who needs to hear that hope is still possible. And most of all, subscribe to Love and Twilights, because this is only one of many stories we'll tell that remind us love heals, faith rebuilds, and sometimes what breaks us is just the beginning of what makes us whole. Thank you for watching. Thank you for feeling. We'll see you in the next story.